for the participants who are joining a bit late. Okay. Great. For the record, again, a warm welcome from my side. This is our November series of our SAP Garage session. And in this session, we'll be talking about how you as a business or you as a line of business can develop extensions for SAP S/4HANA with SAP BTP ABAP Environment Runtime. Yeah. And along with me, I have a couple of experts, also some of my colleagues joining in today's sessions. Yeah. So the whole idea for SAP Garage session is all about, pick up a specific business use case and then walk you through with that business use case and see the nitty-gritties of how you can implement those scenarios. And the complexity of those scenarios may vary. I mean, it can start from a simple extension application to a full-fledged application, which is, readily available for enterprises and businesses to use. To cater to that, in today's session, we'll be picking one such extension scenario application where I have with me my colleague and also our expert for today's session, Andre, who will be walking us through this mission, which goes by the name of Develop Extensions for SAP S/4HANA with SAP BTP ABAP Environment Runtime. Yeah. So more on the mission will be taken care by Andre because obviously he's the expert, so he knows it better than I do. Before that, who is all in the Garage session today with us? So I am Gaurav speaking from India. I'll be your host for SAP Garage for this session. I have with me my colleague Andreas and Taurus, who are also, behind the scenes. Then Andre, our expert, who is the product manager for the ABAP environment stack, and then obviously you folks who make us successful with this SAP Garage and for other SAP BTP solutions and also business services. Some housekeeping rules: if you have some questions, put them in the chat while Andre is speaking, or if you feel that you can convey the message more better while unmuting yourself, please feel free to do that. The session is being recorded, so if you're joining a bit late, the recording, the slides, all the links will be shared to you post the session. With that, I hand it over to Andre. Andre, all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. Yeah, and thanks, Andreas, for letting all the other people in, so that seems that we have a packed house here. Let me find the Bildschirm freigeben button. Okay, so yeah, what will we talk about today? So the talk will be about side-by-side extension scenario, which is available as a mission in the Discovery Center. And therefore, I would like to shortly start about how you can develop extensions for SAP S/4HANA. Here, the main topic with BTP ABAP Environment, but also with what other options you have. But this is then a topic for different missions. So we have here a new extensibility guide that has been published just a few days ago. And this describes in 44 pages, still on a high level, more high level view, what kind of extension scenarios there are available. And yeah, I can recommend this, but don't start to read it now. Maybe you first listen, and then you will have time enough later to dig there into the details. So if we look at, especially at SAP HANA Cloud on the left side, there are basically three options how you can extend the functionality in SAP S/4HANA Cloud. And you can use the same stuff now in SAP S/4HANA on-prem and in private cloud, which is technically similar to on-prem scenarios. So first of all, there is the option to use so-called key user extensions. So key user extensions are Fiori-based tools that run here in SAP S/4HANA Cloud or in SAP S/4HANA. And these can be used, for example, to add a field to a table, but you do not do this directly to the table. You select the application and think, oh, I would like to have an additional field there. And by defining an additional field there, it will be created in the application, but it will be propagated down to the database table. So typical scenario is maintain product, and then the good old Mara is extended by one additional field. Then, which is now new, there is the option to do so-called on-stack developer extensions. That means you can develop with ABAP on SAP S/4HANA Cloud, and that's something which was not available so far. We call this also embedded steampunk. So you can use more or less an ABAP sandbox, which is running on the same box, and here you have the option to tap into local interfaces. So that is that's a difference here to what we show here. What you can do with BTP ABAP environment, so a naked steampunk, which runs side by side to either a cloud-based SAP S/4HANA or an on-prem-based S/4HANA. Here you call the functionality by calling remote APIs, and here we have the option to use different technologies. We can use OData, we can use SAP web services, and we can use RFC function modules. So this is shown here in more detail. So the whole development that you do in SAP in SAP BTP ABAP environment is done by the so-called ABAP RESTful application programming model. And since it's a very long name, we have a short abbreviation for that. That's called RAP, which fits nicely to CAP, which is the other, let's say, side-by-side extensibility option. While in CAP, you would program with Java or JavaScript. In RAP, you do this by ABAP. And then it's up to you to decide which kind of side-by-side extension technology you take. So the ABAP stack has, let's say, the advantage, it's ABAP, okay? It's an advantage for those who can program ABAP, but that's definitely a good thing because they do not have to learn Java or JavaScript just for the sake of building a side-by-side extension, and the same code, so the same framework of the ABAP RESTful program model is also used to do on-stack extensions. So the same developer could either do a side-by-side or an on-stack extension. Yeah, so the communication to the ABAP, to the underlying ABAP, which is used here in this SAP BTP ABAP environment, this is accessible via public interfaces. So in contrast to a normal on-prem NetWeaver you might be accustomed to, where you can, let's say, do a select star from USR02 to get, let's say, user data. Here you have to use public interfaces. So there is no way to tap directly into these internal stuff. So that might look or sound like an sound like a restriction. However, it comes with a big advantage because the whole implementation becomes more stable because those public interfaces do not change, and during an upgrade, your implementation that you have built in such a stack will not have a problem. And we are upgrading this service every 3 months automatically without any, let's say, you cannot do anything against this. You can only apply for an earlier upgrade. If you have 2 systems, then you can ask, oh, I would like to have my first system upgrade a little bit earlier. And the next upgrade will take place on November the 12th, 13th to the next version, which will be 2011. Okay, So this is how this side-by-side extensibility looks like and when to use what. So I've talked now about different extensibility options, and we will focus here on the side-by-side. So if one of the first three questions is answered with a yes, then you will end up with the side-by-side extension. So that will be the recommended way to go. While if you are looking for more tightly coupled extensions, then probably the on-stack development is the better choice, because you would not, let's say, like to read so many data via remote APIs. And the key user extensions, they come into play for this, we call it last mile extension. So UI flexibility, custom fields. So these are cool tools because they work seamlessly now for years. However, it's not real in quotes development. So anything that needs real development would either be a side-by-side extension or an on-stack extension. And from a tooling perspective, that means you are using ABAP development tools in Eclipse. So all the whole language, new language options are only available with ABAP development tools in Eclipse. So there is no way to use SAP GUI anymore. And this is something that I strongly recommend to have a look into it. So here it's also the summary of the extensibility options. So you can, if you would have a look at this document, I have some where I published the link to. It's then explained in more detail when to use what and what we understand here under these synonyms: key user extensibility, on-stack developer extensibility, and side-by-side extensibility, which is our today's topic. So we start with entering in SAP Discovery Center, and there is this mission. You will find this link for develop extensions for SAP S/4HANA with SAP BTP ABAP Environment. If you click on this, it starts here. There is an overview which already provides a nice description what we are about to do. And then you can click here on the project board and can, for example, click on the link here. I've now been logged off because I was inactive for quite a while. So I have to click once again, and I'm now entering the started mission. Okay, third time now. Then the tile opens and it tells me that the prerequisites would be are described in the getting started document, and you can do this mission by using the SAP BTP trial, and you have to have an ADT installation with the latest ADT. SAP BTP trial can be used. However, it's a shared trial. So if you want to have your own system, you would have to go for the free tier options. So that would be also the recommendation if you later on would, let's say, want to switch to production, because everything you do in this free tier, you can take more or less with you. The shared trial is cool to test something, to try it out, but I would never ever, let's say, start to implement something that contains your intellectual property, because it's shared and everybody can see what you are doing, and at the same time you can see what the others are doing. So if we click here in this new link, we see here that this getting started document, this refers to a description how to install the ABAP development tools in Eclipse, what you have to do there, and how to set up a trial account once when you have already an ABAP instance in your, or an access to an ABAP instance, better to say, in the shared trial. Good. So that's the first point here. Maybe I have to. So I have to go back 1 moment. No. Again, project board. So so this is now the 3rd time that I click here. So this is how you create such a trial user. So we are still in the prepare phase. And here, the same tutorial, the steps 2 and 3, they explain then more in detail how to connect the system and how does it look like then. If you look here in my moment, in my ADT. So here I'm already connected to such a system. And here you find then such a project with a packet, and this is then a package of the side-by-side extension scenario that I have created earlier. We will take a look at this later. Good. So then we start now with developing something. So I will make this a little bit smaller so it's better to see here. So basically what we will do is when developing this side-by-side extension scenario, it's a very simplified thing, definitely. We'll start with one table and right-click on it. And then there is a new option in ADT that allows us to generate ABAP repository objects, those ABAP repository objects that are needed to build a so-called RAP BO, so a business object based on the ABAP RESTful programming model. What you then will see is here, what I just showed you, that you will see that you will see several objects that are going to be generated as part of this result of a generator. So based on the table, we will create a draft table which is needed to store draft data definitions for the different layers of our RAP BO. And all these are generated without having to write a single line of code. And only then you start with the implementation. And we start that, so I can now open here this this script, and it starts by creating a database table. But maybe before I start, I show you the end result. So the end result will be an application that has an OData version 4 service binding. And if I double click on this, so these are the products. So I clicked on the wrong link. We are talking here about inventory data. And if I press go, I see some data that I've created earlier. And if I press here the create button, I can select here products from a remote ABAP system. So we are using here the ES5 system, and which is technically, to be precise, not an SAP S/4HANA system, but it's a public ABAP system which is available on the internet. Okay, I've selected this. I can maybe take I can choose a quantity. And here I'm you see it's a nice value help that I get. I just have to type E, and then I can select the quantity here. And if I now press create the button, you see that the price is automatically updated, and that's the second remote call, which is part of the scenario. This is a SOAP call that goes to the backend. Looking at the business scenario, that wouldn't make sense really, because you would do this with just one call. But what we want to show here, what we want to showcase here, that it is possible to use different technologies to perform this backend call. And here in this demo, you can use OData and SOAP. So we have provided services on that backend that do not require any authentication. In a real scenario with a free tier system, you would be able to connect to the backend locally, let's say to your SAP S/4HANA backend at home. And here you would even be able to call RFC function modules. So there are three options for side-by-side scenarios: OData, RFC, and SOAP. Good. Any questions so far? I see something in the chat.
Yeah, there are two questions, Andre. You want to take them right now, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let me read them out. First one is from Guy. He asks that so there are multiple parts to this question. Does UI extensions require Fiori elements?
It's not mandatory. So what I show here is something that you can use Fiori elements. So that would work, but a service based on the ABAP RESTful programming model could also be consumed by a native SAP UI5 application. So it's not mandatory to use Fiori elements. It's just let's say our recommendation: if you can use it, try to have a look at your scenario. Then it's maybe best to go for it, because you get lots of things, for free. If it is a scenario that cannot be handled, then maybe another technology would be better.
Great. I guess that answers the other parts of the question of Guys. He has another question, which I think is at least good to me. Looks like for on-stack S/4HANA versus S/4HANA Cloud, the recommended option is to develop extensions inside S/4HANA. How does this reconcile with recommendations that we should always keep a clean core and develop extensions in BTP, regardless if S4 is privately owned, like on-prem or own AWS infra?
Okay, so let me, the answer is that, let's say it depends what is recommended, and that's why I would recommend to read the document. So because then it will be clear when we recommend which extensibility option. So there are different extensibility options available, and maybe there are also scenarios where you could use one or the other. So the on-stack development is definitely something you might want to use if you have a very tight integration with let's say with tons of data, while side-by-side extension is by nature better for a loosely coupled scenario. So Gaurav just posted the link again of that extensibility guide. So that's something you would have to go through. And it's still clean core if you do on-stack development, because as I said, it's more or less, you can think about this as a sandbox. The core is not touched. So it's opposed to an on-prem system where you can behave, or better say misbehave, and call each and every local API and do maybe even modifications. And this is not the case in on-stack extensibility. Okay, and okay, what's the difference between creating a DP table and a custom business object? So the difference is custom business objects are used in are also tables and CDS views on top. These are done with key user tools. And with this developer extensibility, you would create a table. So technically, if you would really look behind it, the tables that are created there will have different ABAP language versions. But now let me continue here. How do I get rid of these? Okay, anyway. That I would start here now to walk you through the creation of such an extension. So we will create here a new package.
Andre, can you please maximize this window?
Yes,
so
sure.
That,
yeah, but later, one moment. 620. So DG2 is the demo for this afternoon. And the super package is Z local. So if you work in a steampunk system and also in an embedded steampunk system, there is always the software component Z local. That's more or less the successor of $temp in an on-prem system. The difference is here that transport requests are still created. However, these are not transportable. But if you do real development later on, it's for playing around and demoing something and trying out things. That's great. But if you do real development, you would have to create a so-called software component. Okay, we will choose next. And then I create a new request here for demo EMEA. Okay, press finish. And then you see that a package has been created. Oh, I again forgot to click on this small, nice checkbox when you create a new package. There is the option that it automatically is added to the favorite packages. And here we are going to create a table. So we choose other development objects and then just type table, and that will create a database table. And here I'm going to go to the script and get the content, the source code of my table. So the name of the table, sorry, is something like ZRUP 620, and we use this 3 digits here because we use it also for TechEd, such scripts, and then it's and since we are using their shared systems and several groups, we use that for getting unique names. I can press next, and now I'm creating a new table in ADT, and as you can see, it's a UI where you can create a table using more or less a text editor. And here, when I now press Ctrl F, I can search and replace not 00 DG2. I'm replacing everything, and then it will generate my table, and the table is now active. And what I can do now is I can right-click on that table. One
So folks, meanwhile, Andre is back. If you have
Yeah, sorry.
questions,
Yeah,
let them
no.
coming in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was just that I had to check whether it was an urgent call or not, which it was not. Thanks. Okay. So I've created a table, and I can right click now on that table and choose this menu option, generate repository objects. And here I'm able to choose between 3 different types of generators. So the first one is a generator, it's called business configuration maintenance object. It could also be called table maintenance generator. So it's something, it can be used to generate the equivalent of something like an SM30 UI for table maintenance, for customizing tables. But here we are talking about a UI-based service for the ABAP RESTful programming model, and choose next. And the wizard starts with asking us for names for the objects we are going to create. So I am going to select here this names. So the names are listed here in the script. In an upcoming version of the generator, there will be names that will be suggested based on the S/4HANA naming convention. So that is something which is not yet available. So here I choose the name for the alias. So that's the name of the entity that will be not travel, but inventory, sorry. And then the behavior has to be defined in an ABAP RESTful business object. So the name of the behavior definition will be the same as the data definition name. So this Z, and here I choose something like a custom namespace underscore. This R underscore is the abbreviation for restricted view. This we use for the base layer of CDS views. And then the name of the entity, and then TP for transactional processing. And this DG2 is just a suffix that we need here so that I can run my demo several times. So the implementation class is now a class which will hold the business logic, where you as an ABAP developer will later enter code. So though something will be generated, the ABAP programmer does not become workless. It's just a wizard that will generate some code, which is boilerplate coding that you have to do each and every time. So you select the name of the draft table. So these objects automatically support draft. So that you can work on the object, maybe leave your desk and come later on and then continue to work. Or if you change an existing entry, it will be then also locked so that nobody else will be able to change that. And the projection layer, that's the layer on top of the base views. This has for historical reasons, the abbreviation Z for that comes from consumption views. You may remember this from the Fiori programming model. And then you will have a so-called service definition. The service definition is the list of CDS views, basically, that will be part of our data model that is published. And then finally, a service binding. This is an object because you can publish the same implementation several times using different protocols. But here this wizard just uses this OData version 4 UI protocol. But later on, you could manually, for example, publish it via V2 UI as well. So we choose next, and then we are being presented the names that are going to be generated. I just press finish so that I can meanwhile show show you something else. So we are here. This will be generated, and finally we will end up with several objects that are going to be created. Maybe I can have a short look at the chat. No questions.
All good over there, Andre.
Oh, okay, nice. Yes, it's okay. This still takes here a while in this demo system. Until all the objects that are part of our business are being created, right? So we now, if I now press refresh on the package, you will see that several objects have been created, starting from a draft table. CDS views are created based on that table, and this is a projection layer. This is being generated, and metadata extensions are also created based on this. Okay, so here it would be then to publish this service, and while this is going here to publish, we can have a look at the finished application, because here there is more to see. So, for example, in the projection layer, you will have a value help definition based on a so-called custom entity. This is a special type of CDS views that use an implementation, an ABAP class as an implementation, so the data is not read from a database table, but using a class. And what will we find in this class? This is then the code that calls the remote OData service, and that will then populate our data. So it implements here this IF RAP query provider interface, which comes with one method, which is a select method, and this method gets then the data from the UI, like let's say $top, $skip, and filter stuff like this. And if we there is an IO request object, so that looks quite familiar if you are accustomed to code-based implementation in the ABAP Gateway framework. And then we can retrieve certain stuff from this request. Then we would call our implementation where the data is actually being retrieved. And here we then call the OData client proxy. That's the code that performs the remote call to the OData service on-prem. And we would then provide the filters that we got here, and are finally able, if we run this request, that we get the data back in an internal table, which is then listed when you click here. This is what happens. What happens behind the scenes if you press that button in the UI. In addition, it's a possibility to call SAP services. So there you also have to can use here a SAP service, and in order to get the proxy data, you create so-called service consumption models for OData-based services or for SAP-based services. So if you either import the dollar metadata or the WSDL file of that of the respective services, proxies will be generated in your ABAP environment that allow you to call the remote services. Okay, here in the meanwhile, the publishing has been done. And here you see what a naked application can do. So in that case, since we have used a table that does not use data elements, but internal built-in ABAP types, so we would add here the metadata. Let me check where I have this. I will go back from the script. So the create the date, I'm generating the UI services, and then it would be, one moment. I'm preview the app, and then I will adapt the generated code. That's the exercise 2. And here I'm taking something for my metadata file that I prepared for that. I will just replace it here in my generated code. That will also be enhanced so that it will be supported for built-in types as well. DG2, here's the metadata extension. So I will replace that. Again, my group number. I will activate my my metadata extension. If I then refresh my browser for the preview, I will see that that I now get nice description. I press create. I would be able to really enter data. But as you can see, there are no value helps. So this is something you would then have to implement. And this is then described in this script in more detail what to do if you walk through that. Yeah, that maybe brings me back to my presentation. So this is what you gain if you follow this mission in our Discovery Center. We are working on a mission for this on-stack development as well. And yeah, if you have questions, you can ask them now. If you ask them later on, these questions will end up in the inbox of Andreas and me anyway. So that we would then get in touch probably. So, and because this is an offering, this Discovery Center, which is here for free, but this can be better explained by Gaurav. So running this mission is of no cost for you.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, Andrew, there's one question from Thomas. He's asking about wrap facades with embedded steampunk. So what is about wrap facades with embedded steampunk?
Yeah, wrap facades and embedded steampunk have been built by SAP. So that means we at SAP have built wrap objects around maybe existing classic APIs so that they can be called like wrap objects. So this is what we call wrap facades. And these are then, this is then the way, our way to publish these local existing APIs in a standardized way for the developer in an embedded steampunk. And in an on-prem system, you could even create your own wrap facades, maybe for your Z code. So you would build maybe a wrapper around existing APIs, publish that as C1, as a released object, and then it could be consumed in an embedded steampunk on-prem as well. Yeah,
Great.
exactly. Thanks, Gaurav. Yeah, so. So I see it's a lot. it's a lot of that I showed here in just a short time. So therefore we have scripts that you can try out. We have open subcourse for the ABAP RESTful programming model. It should just show you that you can do with ABAP also something in the cloud. It's an option that you can choose in order to build business application as a side-by-side extension.
Great. So meanwhile, participants, if you think of questions, please let them coming in. We still have a couple of more minutes and Andre is with us. What I would like to show you is, how you land up to Discovery Center and what is Discovery Center is all about to the participants who are, joining in for the first time. So go to your browser of your own choice and then just search for Discovery Center. Probably the first or second hit should bring you to that landing page. Once you are on the landing page, you will primarily see two main facets, missions and services, very clear by their names. Missions are something that are, very close to business specific use cases, the one which Andre showed, the ones which are already available in this mission catalog. So here you can explore all the missions that we have published, colleagues from SAP, colleagues from partner companies. So Discovery Center is a kind of, you could say, a service, a tool, free offering from SAP that enables you to explore use cases like how Andre walked you through one such specific use case, but feel free to start any other use case as well. Yeah, you would see the different pillars under BTP that we have missions available. Yeah, we also have partner companies who are contributing missions. So if you are a partner who is, looking actively to promote your use case, reach out to the SAP ecosystem. Please reach out to Andreas or myself, and we shall be able to help you out. We have missions from many companies contributing in, and we are also planning to open our SAP Garage series to some partners who would like to, tap into more customers. So do let us know. Similarly, missions, we have services, obviously, where you can explore all the BTP services. Today's highlight was ABAP service. So if you want to explore more information on those lines, pricing is one of the sought after features. So feel free to explore the whole pricing over here. As Andre mentioned, the free tier. So we do also have the free tier, segment over here, which gives you a very high level overview of how much HANA quota you get, how many repo objects you get. So feel free to explore them as well. So that was on a very high level what Discovery Center is all about. And I will repeat that, this question comes many a times that will my businesses be charged if I start some mission? So as I said, I'll repeat again, starting a mission is free of cost. Experts availability, like Andre, as he mentioned that, based on his workload, he might revert to your queries, which enables you to start the mission and then work along with him on the cards that he just now showcased. Yeah. So that was primarily on the lines of SAP Garage. What I would like to bring into your attention is also one of our conferences. One of the most sought after conferences from SAP is SAP TechEd. Yeah. If you don't know the dates, we are hosting SAP TechEd in hybrid mode, both virtual and in person, starting from November 15th, running till November 16th. So if you haven't registered so far, please feel free to go ahead and register yourself. We have a great lineup of talks, starting from keynotes from our CTO, from executive board members, and then also, many SAP TechEd tracks are available, like application development, automation, AI, data analytics, so on and so forth. We do also have hands-on labs, and I'm sure Andre would also have some sessions lined up over there. So if you want to experience those scenarios hands-on, Andre can share more details on that part. But we also have some hands-on sessions where you will learn more about SAP Discovery Center as well. And my colleague Andreas can share more information on that. So guys, can you please just give a very brief overview of the sessions that you both are hosting?
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. So we provide a session on the Discovery Center. So getting started with SAP BTP with Discovery Center, and we now are overbooked with the first session, so we will do a repeat. Then I think the first session is on November 15th, and the second one will probably be on the 16th of November. So that's a dedicated session on Discovery Center, and as an example, we will do a very simple Hello World application with Business Application Studio, and also Fiori Launchpad to have that in a single point of entry.
Thanks, Andreas. Andre, would you like to talk a few seconds for your hands-on sessions?
Yeah, so we have a hands-on session on site, so where like a classroom training, and the same session, but then on trial systems, will be available as a free hands-on session as well. So that it in more detail explains how to develop a RAP BO. So you will learn how to use so-called determinations and validations, and about numbering and stuff like that. It's already a good introduction, and if you have run through that, I guess you're pretty sure know what it means to create a RAP BO, and then yeah, as an alternative, you could look at our training offerings as well, or the open subcourse.
So if you haven't,
and there are several lectures as well, as like the extensibility strategy and stuff like that, which is explained there. So one moment, I have to search. There is a blog post of my colleague that lists all the ABAP-based sessions.
Yeah.
Maybe I can share that link. One moment.
That would be great, Andrew. So meanwhile, he gets the link. If you haven't registered so far, please go ahead and register. Yeah. Great. Talking about Garage, the next Garage session will be hosted on December the 7th. The mission that we will be showcasing is on the lines of enabling supplier collaboration across SAP and Azure ecosystem, obviously using BTP. So if you want to share this informative sessions with your peers and colleagues, feel free to do so. The recording and the slides that were shared in today's session will be sent out to you. With that, I will stop sharing, and I will still keep the house open for your questions to come in.
Yeah, so there are already some questions that I maybe can answer. Let's say that was from Chris Ritterherrn. Okay, in ECC systems, to be exact, so in classic ECC systems, you will not be able to do that, but in SAP S/4HANA systems, so that you could use basically the same code and even do something like a side-by-side extensibility that would work, or depending on what you want to call, probably you could also call local APIs. But the ABAP RESTful programming model, and this is the good thing, is available. So that's one an implementation can either run in a Steampunk system, in an embedded Steampunk system in S/4HANA Cloud, or in an S/4 on-prem system. Yeah, I'm not okay for the pricing. I would really have to look it up, but that was the question from Chandra. Yes, you can start for free with free tier. That's what it's meant for, and then go with the cheapest solution for productive usage. And application jobs, I started to answer this. So application background jobs in Steampunk are available as so-called application jobs. And in contrast to reports that have been scheduled via SM37 in on-prem systems, you are scheduling classes that implement certain interfaces. And these interfaces, for example, are responsible for getting the data in form from parameters and select options. So I'm about to write a blog post about this, where I describe how to schedule such an application job from within a RAP BO, so that you can press a button and maybe start, so that an action is executed that would then run such a background job, or better say application job. Yeah, but great to see this big interest. I hope I was able here to, to get you interested in here. So what it means to be an ABAP developer in the future. The good news is here, ABAP is still relevant and be relevant. So you can leverage your ABAP know-how, extend it, and so you are good to go for the future and build new applications or extensions to existing applications using your ABAP skills. But for this, you have to work with new tools. So that's something but I see it in a positive way. So you can use those new cool tools and start developing with the same.
Rightly said, Andre. So let's take another minute for the participants to think those last minute questions. If not, then we close the round. Great. I think now we are already at the top of the hour. So again, thanks everyone. Okay, there's this last question. Where can we get this recording? So the recordings and these slides will be shared to your mailboxes, the one that you use for registering to this series. Yeah. This might take some time, some couple of days, but you will get it in your mailboxes. Great. Thanks everyone for taking out time. Thanks, Andre. Thanks, Andreas, for taking out time of your schedule. And I wish all of you a great time ahead.
Yeah. Also,
thank you
from my side that you took the time to listen, and
absolutely.
hope to hear from you. So if there are any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.